Tell me what you want, what you need. Tell me, tell me, tell me. Tell me what you want, what you need. Tell me, tell me, tell me. Tell me what you want, what you need. Tell me, tell me, tell me. Tell me what you want, what you need. Tell me, tell me, tell me.
Welcome. I'm doing this audio wise because there's a lot to talk about in terms of Scottish wrestling, including opening up to so called promoters, wrestlers' references, and also kids attending sessions at wrestling training schools. I want to talk about a couple of these because a couple of those have actually come up in the past. A couple of them have been resuggested recently by a couple of people, but especially I want to talk about opening up to quote unquote promoters. Basically, the way that it was put forward by someone fairly recently was that they would open up and support people who wanted to run shows in their hometown. That's the basic kind of gist of it. They would, accept and help people who wanted to run shows in their hometown, and they would help set them up to do so, which is not a good idea. To be honest, it sounds like the worst idea ever, or certainly one of the worst ideas that I've heard in recent years. The one, well, to be honest, what it reminds me of is a cross between somebody standing outside of a circus big top with a megaphone shouting roll up, and an MLM, multi-level marketing scheme, which is quite a con. For those who don't know, an MLM is really a business which is, like I said, it's one big con really, where you don't make money selling the product, which could be anything from kitchen knives to hair and makeup and beauty products. The only ones that really make any money are those the management recruiting people to supposedly sell these products. You don't make money selling the products. You make money by recruiting people to supposedly sell the products, because they have to pay for their first batch of they basically have to pay to invest into the company, pay to get their first batch of products to sell, and basically it's the management that will take a cut of everybody's money that they make. So if I was at the head of it, again it's also called a pyramid scheme, if I was to recruit somebody, I would get a cut of their money, and if they were to recruit somebody, they would get a cut of that person's money, which basically means I would get a cut of that second recruit's money as well, because I'm getting a cut of my first recruit's money, and that's how it goes. All the money flows upwards. It's very difficult to sell any of these products because they're not generally, to be honest, particularly brilliant. And that's what it kind of sounds like to me, or also kind of sounds like a franchise model. Um, Obviously, there's cost involved in setting up and running professional wrestling shows. You need a venue to do it. You need all sorts of equipment to do it. You need a wrestling ring. You need some kind of screen for entrance music videos and curtains and seating and you need an entranceway, and there's just so much stuff that you need to physically have. So many physical materials you need to have to put on a show. Obviously, all the money for that, I'm presuming, and this is hopefully not come to fruition at all, but any money for that would have to come out, obviously. And you need insurance and stuff, public liability insurance and all that kind of stuff, I would imagine. I've never run shows. I don't think that I would run shows. I've been a fan of wrestling for coming up to 40 years. I've been attending independent shows for 12, 13 odd years. Even if I had the money, I wouldn't run a show. I honestly wouldn't. I wouldn't dare, because I would have no clue about it. And if you've even got the materials, you would need wrestlers for the show. And I can guarantee if you sign up any contract with anybody, you would probably have to use a particular group of people on your shows, certain individuals especially, and of course because they're working on the show, which is another thing, I can guarantee you would have to probably pay them very well. So really, if it's the same people, not particular individuals that is setting you up for the shows, that's what they're doing. They're going to set you up because they're the only ones that will make any money. Never mind the fact that any Tom, Dick, Harry or Sue running shows, they have no clue what to do. Like I said, even if I had the money, I wouldn't run a show. Maybe I would help kind of contribute to a particular event maybe that I wanted to put on. Maybe if I came up with an idea of, I would really like to see this kind of setup for a show. WWE does paid shows, at least they did in the past, and some argue they do with Saudi Arabia. Maybe you could do something like that, but in terms of taking charge, literally running the show, being the boss, that's something that you can't just pick it up in a couple of hours. Some of those MLMs, they'll advertise it as, aren't you tired of your 9 to 5 drudgery? Don't you want to work for yourself? And you have the potential don't you want the potential, and which is the important word, potential, to earn up to X amount of thousands of pounds? They will take you in and have a couple hour seminars of, this is how we sell these knives or makeup or beauty products or whatever it is. You can't learn how to run a wrestling company within just a couple of hours. Even if you want to strike out on your own eventually, you really need to learn to work within a established Scottish wrestling promotion for a good couple of years before you can do that. And I've seen that happen before with a few people. They work with a promotion, they work for a promotion, they get to learn the job, because that's what it essentially is a job. They get to learn it, and then they'll strike out on their own, or they end up going to do that for whatever reason. And it takes a good couple of years to learn, and you need a good team around you. You can't just walk in and run a wrestling school. It's like any business. You can't just walk in there and run it unless if you don't know what you're doing. You need to learn it. You need to gain some experience in it. And the last thing that Scottish wrestling needs is to be both diluted with even more companies popping up everywhere, and for those not knowing what to do and how to run shows and putting on horrible product and horrible experiences that will eventually damage the reputation of Scottish wrestling. That's what it would do. It's like going to a gig and it's a horrible experience. You might even think twice about going to a gig by a different artist. If you go to Franz Ferdinand or Jay-Z or Beyonce and it's a horrible experience, you would think twice about maybe even going to Oasis or S Club 7 or whoever it is. Even if it's a small localish one, pop concert thing, gig. Even if it's a horrible experience, you might even think about twice about going to anything similar, and that's not what Scottish wrestling needs right now. So I don't think opening up or franchising it or doing that kind of setting up anybody to run wrestling shows. To be honest, you can't complain that nobody knows what they're doing and then allow people who don't know what they're doing to run shows. Basically, you can't complain that nobody knows how to do it in a professional way, then let people who don't know their wrist lock from their wristwatch to run shows. It's not how it works. We need decent, honest, good promoters out there in Scottish wrestling. There's been a lot being talked about in the past about Scottish wrestling and independent wrestling, about who and who should not be involved, and again, I'm sure some people, you might find one or two persons that would do a good show and could do a good job and maybe an asset to Scottish wrestling, but it's highly doubtful. And the last thing Scottish wrestling needs right now is for people to put fans off returning to shows or going to any other shows. Well, really, legitimately, the last thing that we need. So allowing people who don't have a clue to run shows, even myself, I wouldn't even try. That's not a good idea. I want to talk about putting on a show and wrestling references. This is come up again, but this was actually a subject that was talked about just before the pandemic. There was talk again about wrestlers because a large part of, for those who don't know about Scottish independent wrestlers, they are crisscrossing the country. A lot of them working for various different promotions. They may be up in Aberdeen, Inverness area one week or even one day, then the next day travelling down to the Scottish borders or to the north of England, or going across to the west coast, the east coast, up to Thurso or wherever, north of Scotland again, or going different areas, even all in the one weekend. They might have 3 shows in 3 completely different places during one weekend. And I have no problem with young wrestlers, especially, asking those who they know and they trust about where to wrestle and where not to wrestle. I have no problem with that at all. In fact, I think it's pretty much common sense that you'll do that. You see it all the time on Facebook. So and so is asking for recommendations, and it could be for anything for lessons with some musical instrument, to get a new washing machine, a new motor vehicle, games console, video game. Is FIFA 19 any good, or is WWE 2K23 a good game or not? And I don't want to buy it in case it's a bad game, or people are playing it now. Is it a good game? And yes, I know it's not released yet, but when it is, people will be asking, well, is it a good game or not? Should I, I've got WWE 2K22. Should I be laying out the money for the new one? And it's just common sense, because especially if you're a young wrestler, you're a young trainee, you don't know the industry, you do not know, who's good to work for, who's not good to work for, who's a good promoter, who's not a good promoter. And it's just like anything else. Like I said, you ask those who you know and whose opinion you trust, and into where to go and where not to go, because you don't want to go somewhere to agree. For instance, a date with a promoter, you go to that promotion, you work the match, and then, especially if you've agreed a fee, you don't want the promoter to turn around and say, well, actually, I'm not going to pay you. I don't think you're worth it. I don't think your match was good enough, or, oh, well, actually, you're getting paid. You've already been paid. You're getting the exposure of wrestling for my promotion. That's payment enough. More than enough. You don't want that kind of situation. You don't want to be mistreated somewhere. Obviously, you wouldn't return to that promotion, but you want to know where's good, where's bad. And that only if you're a young wrestler, you don't really know who the people involved in the scene. You will ask your friends and your colleagues, and taking the advice of people you know and trust is common sense. It's simple common sense, and it's something that every wrestler should do. First of all, I don't have a problem either with, especially when you're a very young wrestler, if you're just starting out doing shows. I don't have any problem with you just concentrating on your home promotion for a year or so. If it's the promotion that trained you, or it's a promotion associated with your training school, because there are many that have that. A lot of promotions have associated or relationships with training schools. You want to find your feet in wrestling before you move on to other promotions. And let's get things very, very clear. how things work often in professional wrestling on an independent level in terms of talent going to different promotions. Even I know this, that asking various different colleagues and promoters is how you get your name, how you get opportunities elsewhere. If you have concentrated on your home promotion and you're ready to branch out to other promotions, maybe that company does once or twice a month shows. You want, there are other weekends you want to wrestle on, other areas you want to wrestle in, location wise. You could you would ask your colleagues, your friends and your colleagues, about what promotions they work for. Could you get their contact details of that promoter, so that you can contact them and send them links to a YouTube video or even an email the video, or some way of introducing yourself. I got my your details from my colleague Y. I'm wrestler X. Would love to have an opportunity to speak to you regarding a booking opportunity. I'm just starting out, blah blah blah. Make this introduction. Or of course there's always the way of, sometimes the promoters will ask their roster, well, I'm looking to bring in a few fresh faces. Does anybody know anybody? And then your colleague Y might tell that promoter, if colleague Y works for that promoter, then they will say, oh yes, actually down in this particular company, I work with wrestler X. They're very young, they're quite green, aka inexperienced, but I think they've got potential. I'd like to wrestle them up here, or show them the ropes up here, or get them up, and I think another wrestler would work well with them in terms of matches. And that's how it goes, word of mouth. It's asking in that communication of how you get other bookings in various different places. You asking your colleagues and your colleagues recommending you, and obviously, you saying you want to wrestle other places is a large part of that. And so, especially in independent wrestling, you'll work with a lot of established veteran wrestlers. One of the guys who was talking about wrestling with pop-up, was it Scottish Wrestling Pop-Up Promotions in 2023 is the name of the video. One of the guys that does that is a guy whose YouTube channel I watch, which is Scottish Stu's Rants and Reviews. He wrestles in Scotland under the name Johnny Lyons. He's an 18-year veteran of the Scottish wrestling scene, and I genuinely don't think that there's a corner of the country that he hasn't wrestled in. I think he's wrestled pretty much everywhere. He's very well known and very well respected. So then there's various other names. Again, I don't want to go into names, or otherwise I'll forget somebody, or somebody says, well, I do this and that as well, and then I'll kind of forget that they do that. But there's a lot of established veterans on the scene nowadays, and their knowledge of the scene and their knowledge of promotions can be very handy in terms of where good companies are, where good where good companies are, where bad companies are, and especially maybe what in particular wrestling promotions are looking for. They may be looking for some junior heavyweights, they may be looking for heavyweights, they may be looking for a particular style of wrestler to freshen up their roster with. Depends on what promoters want to do in different areas. So again, it's all word of mouth, it's all getting your name out there and asking around. So I think wrestlers asking for references, again, even you do when you're applying for a job. Maybe you can write down in a letter of introduction, if you get the contact details of a promoter from one of your colleagues that you wrestle in one particular promotion with, you can write, I work with wrestler Y and wrestler S in this other promotion. Contact them, ask them what they think of me. We've had some good matches together. If they're willing to go to bat for you, then you can include that in any email or whatever. Yeah, I know it's kind of an old style way to do things, email it. I don't know whether that's really even done these days, hopefully it might be still. But some form of communication, even if it's speaking on the phone, you could say, "Well, I work with wrestler Y and wrestler S that you know or you use," and so you can ask them what they think of me before considering me to give considering giving an opportunity to me. It's a simple thing to do. It really is. Generally, very very simple. I would also very quickly like to say before I we'll move on to the final topic I want to talk about. Wrestlers also, like I said about the bad experience about not getting paid and being paid in so-called exposure, which seems to be a thing nowadays in various different industries. Wrestlers these days have the ability to choose where and where not to wrestle. Just like everybody won't get on with everybody else, and I understand that. There's lots of wrestlers. But I think Johnny Lyons was a couple of people were saying like there's 100 odd maybe wrestlers across the Scotland, which is a fair number. Again, they crisscross areas of Scotland. Some companies might suit you, some other companies might not suit you. The atmosphere, the general vibe of the company, or whatever, it just maybe not suit you. And I think wrestlers these days, especially, have absolutely the right, if they don't feel that they're a right fit for the company, or in particular if it's going to be a bad experience, or they don't like the promoter for whatever reason, they have absolutely got the right to turn down bookings for a particular promoter. And they're well within the rights to do that, if they so wish. If they even if they try out the promotion, and again, they don't like it for whatever reason, they don't feel it's working out for them, then they've got the right to say, well, I don't feel I'm right wrestler for your company, or whatever. I think they've got entirely the right to do so. I don't agree with anybody putting pressure on them, if that was to happen, to do that, but certainly wrestlers have got the right, for whatever reason, to work where they want to work and not work where they don't. I also want to quickly try and talk about junior classes or young kids in training schools. And I know I'm kind of running through this a little bit. I've tried to record this a couple of times and it seemed to be getting a little bit faster every time. But I want to talk about these junior classes because that's something also that's been come up again also before the pandemic, which obviously brought a shutdown to many of these junior classes, etc. And well, actually, many wrestling facilities completely. Obviously, during the strictest of the restrictions that were in place. I don't think it's a bad idea to have very small kids in attending sessions at wrestling training schools. Genuinely, I don't. I think it's a great idea to, first of all, have somewhere those kids can put their energy and attention in the first place. I think it's good to give them something to concentrate on rather than just schoolwork. It's something that they can look forward to at the weekend or whenever it is, even if it's Wednesday night. Something that they can look forward to, something they can enjoy, they can run around, and they can have fun with. If you've got the right facilities and you've got the right staff, I see no problem with it. Especially with the really young kids, like starting, early primary age kids. They'll just be running around, maybe basically kind of exercise session with wrestling type themes thrown in. Maybe it's not going to be literally learning how to wrestle. It's going to be basically an exercise class, with a little bit of fun wrestling stuff thrown in. It's not going to be, right, well, this is how you do a DDT, this is how you jump off the top rope, this is how you even sell a move, whatever. Again, it's, I think having somewhere that kids are interested in, because obviously, we've got plenty of kids that have other interests, like, some playing weekend league football, rugby, golf, various different hobbies and interests. if kids, and some kids will have an interest in wrestling while they're young and grow out of it, move away, maybe life takes them in different directions, or they lose interest or wanting to do it, they'll move on to other stuff. Some won't, obviously. I think that though, if they are interested in that time, and if they lose interest, they'll stop going. Obviously, they'll maybe, even if they want to, if the classes are there maybe all year round, maybe they'll go for a few months and stop going. But if they really have a genuine interest and passion for wrestling, and enjoy the classes, then they'll enjoy it and they'll have fun, hopefully. And again, it'll direct their energy and their attention in the right way. I know it's kind of an old cliche, but it'll keep them off the streets. It'll give them something to look to, and they'll, obviously they're not going to learn all of life's lessons there. You don't learn all of life's lessons in one particular place, whether it be wrestling trainings or school itself. But having that place where they can get interested in something and burn off energy and just have that interest in their hobby, stoked, that fire stoked in them, it's a good thing. And obviously, for young kids, it'd be an exercise thing. But then when you get older, it's up to each individual training school exactly, what age they start doing sessions for, whether they accept people very, very young at school starting age, or whether, you have to wait till you're 16 to attend their training schools are different age things, and that's up to each individual training school. But I think if you've got different age groups, for those who really genuinely want to do it, they'll stay in it, and they'll keep going to classes and going to sessions. And as the kids get older or in different age groups, you'll have different kind of wrestling curriculum in terms of that training school. You'll introduce elements of wrestling, and as the age groups get older and older, then you can really more turn it into proper wrestling training, in terms of what they're doing during the sessions. But again, with the right school, the right facility, the right staff, especially these days, if young kids are really enjoying doing that, and if their passion is wrestling, some will stick at it, some won't, as I said. Some may even go through those age groups, and some of them may end up going on shows. I've seen it about 3 or 4 individuals. They start training, and you think, okay, they're doing some training, that's fine, they'll enjoy it for a while, then they stick at it, and eventually they start either being a wrestler or at the stage of trying to be a wrestler, and they're wanting to pursue it, and they're wanting to be on shows, or they're on shows, maybe in a smaller role or associated role, and or they end up being, and I've seen it 3 or 4 times at least during the 12, 13 odd years of attending local wrestling shows, of people who start training as relatively young kids and end up going on shows. I mean, obviously that's where we get wrestlers from. They've been wrestling fans, a lot of them, since they were very, very young, really got interested in it, started training eventually, and then eventually ended up becoming wrestlers, like we see up and down Scotland. There is the kind of all the talk sometimes about wrestlers from decades ago, the World of Sport days in particular, starting wrestling very, very young as literal professionals. That was more to do with schools, and basically no real progression available for them academically. Once they reach, because the school leaving age has gone up over the years, and some of them, 13, 14, 15, got kind of booted out of school, had no real progression available to them academically, so they would either like Adrian Street, Exotic Adrian, very famous Welsh wrestler. There was the threat of him going down the mine with his father. Some would end up working. Some people will end up working in factories or some industrial kind of jobs. But some of the guys, especially the World of Sport days, they might know somebody or know somebody who might know somebody who wrestles or trains wrestlers, and that's how they ended up falling into becoming a professional wrestler at such a young age. So I don't think having young kids and having them giving them somewhere, especially right now locally, there's quite a few programs and social program things that are having their funding cut or their funding axed completely. And genuinely locally where I live, there's not a huge deal for kids and stuff to do. So I think there's so many different programs and different facilities that are no longer around, or not available, or don't do what they used to, because either those who just locally, those who used to run the things retired and there was nobody to take over, or as I said, their funding was cut and so it disappeared, or the facilities to host them is not going to be available to them, so that disappeared. There's various different reasons why some of these social kind of programs have disappeared, even locally over the last few years. And so I think young kids, if they enjoy it and if it's a bit of fun for them, why not give them that outlet once or twice a week? I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. If you've got the right facilities, the right staff, and all the right proper procedures in place, there's no harm in letting the kids have a bit of fun. And again, it might even lead towards educating people about what professional wrestling is really like. Again, and I kind of want to try and start wrapping up this video. As much as we would like to think that wrestling is mainstream and everybody knows kind of what's going on, professional wrestling is still a little bit of a cult thing. There isn't really, a whole load of individuals like, say for example, again, football. There isn't thousands of people queuing up to attend wrestling events on the weekends like there is going to football matches. And to be able to educate people on what professional wrestling truly is, and this is one of the predetermination and everything else in that regard is constantly talked about ad nauseum, but for being able to educate kids and even maybe their parents and families about wrestling and get them to understand just what goes into it, basically, without going into too much detail, what goes into being a wrestler and putting on shows and all the things like that. I think it's a great opportunity it's kind of a community kind of thing, to let community understand it and get community support as well. And again, that hopefully convert these kids, especially if they're too young to help out with shows, because that's the way that some trainees start, is being security at shows or being kind of ushers or being extras, helping put the ring up and helping set up the venue, etc. If they're too young as well, that's maybe a decent kind of, even if you're offering a discount or family ticket thing, that's maybe a good way of getting people going to Scottish wrestling shows as well. You get them interested in one, the kids maybe want to go to wrestling shows, and so they'll maybe bring their family, and again, it's to sell tickets and keeps, and whatever you think of that, it'll help keeps the scene alive. I want to do say, again, there's been talk about who should be involved, who shouldn't be involved in professional wrestling. All I will say is that it is up to those involved in the scene. Scottish wrestling right now is in a solid state. It's could be better, as always. It could always be better. But, if we have good people both in and outside of the ring working hard to be an asset to the business, to the industry, good promoters put on good shows, enjoyable shows, providing fans with enjoyable experiences, because again, the mass majority of audiences are families who are out and about, who may see a poster or an advertisement or social media for wrestling shows. That's still a large majority of, a good majority at least, of the audience for wrestling shows. The vast majority of shows in Scotland are family friendly shows. And so to make a good experience for those families and friends, to make it so enjoyable that they'll want to come back next time and the time after that, is really what we need to look for in terms of achievements and goals in Scottish wrestling. Because that would be the ideal, to have them see a poster for a show somewhere, to really enjoy it, and so when they see another poster for a live wrestling show by a decent promotion, hopefully, then they'll have no qualms, no arguments about, oh yeah, we'll go to another show. Kids enjoyed it last time, maybe even it's been a while if they're not going every month, or maybe they're in a different area, they're gone on holiday and now they're back home, or vice versa. We want them to be able to see a poster for a live wrestling show and have no qualm, no arguments about going, because they enjoyed the experience that last time and they'll enjoy the experience this time. Again, that may be a bit of idealism, but that's the way it really hopefully should work, and that's what a lot of businesses, whether they're a fast food restaurant or selling cars or washing machines or games consoles or whatever, you want people to enjoy your product and to rebuy from you next time that they're in the market. And for things like entertainment, you've got the different nights and continual ongoing storylines and matches, different matches every time that can take place. So I think that's the kind of obviously the ideal thing, that the Scottish wrestling provides good experiences for everybody, so they'll want to come back time and time again. I mean, you hear a lot of independent shows, announcers at the end thanking the fans for coming and asking them, did you have a good time? Oh, can't hear you, did you have a good time? And trying to get the audience cheering, and then obviously advertising, oh, well, you can catch us next time, 31st of next month at X venue, and we'll be there, and we'll be here and there, and wherever their next shows are. They'll say, oh, well, if you enjoyed tonight, come back and see us. That happens, that happens all the time, it should happen. But, just a few thoughts about Scottish wrestling. And again, just from a fan, my own perspective, as always. Again, just kind of TLDR, opening up wrestling promoters. We need decent wrestling promoters who know what they're doing. Any Tom, Dick, Harry or Sue can't really walk off the street and know exactly what they're doing in terms of running a wrestling show. It's so involved, and we need decent, solid people who, who know what they're doing running shows. Wrestle references, again, common sense. If you're going to buy anything or go anywhere, you're going to ask people you know and trust for their opinion before you do it. Same in wrestling. If you're a young wrestler, even a bit more established wrestler, maybe has been concentrating more on your home promotion, and you want to branch out a little bit, you'll ask your friend and colleagues where to go, and kids in training school. Again, all these kind of social and community project things and places that will keep kids off the street and not let them go down the wrong path in life is always a good thing in my view. If it's constructive and helpful to the kids, and it's something that they enjoy doing, even if you don't put any social aspects in front of them, you just let them run around and enjoy themselves for a couple hours a week, it's a good thing. But like I said, Scottish wrestling is in a good place. We've got talent internationally doing really well. WWE have got several Scottish wrestlers on their books. Guys like Luke King Sharper doing great in Europe. Jack Morris, who I saw very early in his career, not as much as I would like, is doing great things in Pro Wrestling Noah in Japan. There are various other ones out with and within Scottish borders doing pretty well right now.